All right, welcome everybody. You sent over some really fascinating stuff about the Bangkok property market looking ahead to 2025. We're going to try to unpack all of that,
Yeah.
cut through the noise, and figure out what really matters, right? What are the big takeaways, the opportunities maybe,
Right.
for anyone who's interested in this market?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a deep dive. We're going to be looking at how resilient the market is, all the infrastructure projects,
Hmm.
the sustainability trends, the tech innovations that are shaping things,
Hmm.
buyer preferences, what's luxury looking like,
Right.
where are the new hotspots to invest,
Yep.
commercial real estate, regulation changes, and of course,
Mm-hmm.
what are the predictions? Lots to unpack.
Yeah, lots to unpack. Okay, so let's jump right in.
Yeah.
One of the things that struck me is just how well Bangkok seems to be doing overall,
Yeah.
despite all the global craziness, right?
Yeah.
Like the sources mentioned government support, things like reduced property transfer fees.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how much of a difference do those kinds of things really make?
Well, they do make a difference because they act as a direct stimulus. Anything that lowers the cost of transactions is going to get buyers and sellers
Yeah.
more motivated, right?
Right.
Hard to quantify exactly without specific data, but it definitely helps cushion the market.
Okay, yeah. And so looking ahead to 2025 specifically, GDP growth is projected at what, 3.5 to 4.5%.
Right.
Inflation 2 to 3, interest rates around 3 to 4. How do those numbers
Right.
translate into what actually happens on the ground,
Well, that's the key question,
Right.
right? Because GDP growth, okay, it's positive, so, steady economic activity that
Yeah.
supports demand. But then you've got inflation, which means the cost of everything, including property, goes up.
Right.
And then interest rates, well, that directly affects how much it costs to borrow money, right? So it impacts affordability. And of
Well,
course,
yeah.
investment returns, if you're borrowing. So it's a bit of a balancing act.
Yeah, it's like a push and pull, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But then you also have these global trends to think about, too.
Yeah,
Geopolitical stability, currencies going up and down,
right.
international interest rates. I mean, how do those things trickle down and affect things in Bangkok?
Well, Bangkok is not an island, right? I mean, look, if the region is stable, investors feel more confident. That attracts foreign buyers,
Yeah.
especially at the luxury end. Currencies, well, if the Thai baht weakens, say, against the dollar or the euro,
Hmm.
suddenly Bangkok property becomes more affordable for those buyers. So
Okay.
demand can go up. And then global interest rates, well, they affect capital flows, right? The cost of borrowing internationally.
Mm-hmm.
And that indirectly impacts the local market.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something a little more concrete. Infrastructure.
Hmm.
The BTS SkyTrain, the MRT subway lines,
Yeah.
they're expanding, right? How's that going to change the city, especially for people who rely on those lines to get around property values, for example?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. Think about it. Areas that used to be a hassle to get to,
Yeah.
suddenly they're connected to the city center, other key districts,
Mm-hmm.
makes those areas way more appealing for people working in the city, right?
Right.
Who might not be able to afford to live right in the heart of things.
Right.
Demand goes up, and typically, property values follow. It's classic infrastructure driving development and price increases.
Yeah. And then there's that huge Eastern Economic Corridor project,
Yeah, the EC.
the EEC, right?
Yeah.
Focusing on industry and infrastructure on that eastern seaboard.
Right.
What kind of ripple effects are we likely to see from something that big, especially around those industrial estates? Warehousing, logistics, all of that.
Yeah, the EEC, it's a big deal. They
Right.
want to make that whole area a hub for all kinds of advanced industries.
Mm.
So you're going to have more jobs, more businesses, both local and international.
Yeah.
And that means increased demand for all types of property, homes for workers, commercial spaces.
Right.
And as you said, yeah, warehouses, distribution centers, all the stuff that keeps those industries running smoothly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then zooming back in on Bangkok itself,
Right.
better roads, better internet, it's becoming more and more connected.
Definitely.
And that seems to be boosting demand in new areas, but also in older parts of the city that are getting revitalized, right?
Oh.
And there's this real emphasis on rentals and co-living spaces now.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is? What's driving that?
Well, a few things. Bangkok property in the center can be pricey, right?
Mhm.
So renting is a more accessible way to get in, especially for younger people moving to the city.
Yeah.
And then there's flexibility,
Mhm.
People want options.
Yeah.
Co-living spaces tap into that. Often they're more affordable,
Mm-hmm.
more community-focused, flexible arrangements.
Yeah.
And with better connectivity, well, suddenly more areas become viable options for that kind of living.
Okay, I see. Now, let's talk about sustainability. It's not just a buzzword anymore.
It seems like it's become a core factor for buyers in Bangkok, especially younger ones who are more environmentally aware. What are they looking for specifically in terms of eco-friendly features?
Yeah, it's really interesting how specific they are, actually. It's not just about being green in a vague way. They
Really?
want concrete things. Energy efficiency is huge, solar panels, better insulation to lower energy use.
Hmm.
Water conservation is important too, like rainwater harvesting systems. They want sustainable materials like bamboo.
Yeah.
And importantly, they want access to green spaces, good public transport.
Yeah.
So it's about reducing reliance on cars, having options.
Yeah.
It's a whole lifestyle, really.
Makes sense. And it seems like green building certifications, things like LEED in trees,
Right.
are becoming more and more important, right? For buyers and investors, why should they care about those certifications?
Think of it as a quality check for sustainability.
Okay.
An independent body saying, yes, this building meets certain standards.
Mhm.
For buyers, that can mean lower utility bills,
Mm.
healthier indoor air quality, potentially higher resale value down the line
Right.
as green buildings become even more desirable. For developers, these certifications are a major selling point.
Yeah.
They attract environmentally conscious buyers, even big investors who are paying more attention to these things now. The fact that even hotels and industrial estates are getting on board shows how important this is becoming across the board.
Okay, that's really interesting. And then you have these sustainable living initiatives popping up within developments, right?
Yeah.
Community gardens, EV charging stations, recycling programs.
Right.
I mean, are those things really moving the needle for buyers these days?
They are. It speaks to a desire for a certain kind of lifestyle,
Yeah.
more responsible, more community-oriented. And developers get that. It's
Yeah.
not just about checking boxes anymore. It's about creating a living environment that people actually want,
Yeah.
building a sense of belonging.
Mm.
It's about selling a lifestyle as much as a property.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, let's talk tech now. Smart homes seem to be on the rise in Bangkok by 2025. Automated lighting, climate control, security systems.
Right.
What's driving that? And for you as a homeowner, what are the big benefits of all that?
Well, people want convenience, they want efficiency,
Yeah.
and ultimately a better quality of life. Smart homes offer that.
Mm-hmm.
Control things remotely, lower energy bills with automated systems,
Yeah.
improve security with smart surveillance. Developers are realizing that this stuff isn't a luxury anymore.
Mm.
It's what people expect, especially younger buyers who are comfortable with technology. So they're integrating it into new projects from the get-go.
Yeah, it's becoming standard. Right.
Absolutely.
And then you have the Internet of Things, or
Yeah.
IoT, coming into play in real estate.
Right.
Sensors that monitor air quality, water quality,
Yeah.
predictive maintenance, optimizing energy use based on how many people are in a building, all that stuff.
Yeah.
This seems like it could have a huge impact, especially for people who are investing in bigger properties.
It definitely can. When you're talking about large buildings, residential or commercial, IoT is a game changer for efficiency and cost savings.
Mm-hmm.
You get real-time data on things like air quality,
Yeah.
so you can make adjustments, keep the environment healthy. Predictive maintenance means you can catch problems before they become expensive repairs.
Mhm.
And optimizing energy use based on occupancy. Well, that can save a lot of money.
Yeah.
For investors, all of that means a healthier bottom line and a more attractive property for tenants.
Right. It's all connected. And then there's virtual reality, or VR. I mean, this is changing how property is bought and sold.
Yeah.
You've got virtual tours for people who are buying remotely.
Mhm.
You can see off-plan developments.
Right.
Even personalized options virtually, like you said. I mean, I remember you even sent a whole table breaking down all the features and impacts of VR in real estate.
Yeah.
I mean, how is this changing the game for someone looking to buy in Bangkok, maybe someone overseas?
It's removing geographical boundaries. Think about it. If you live in, I don't know, London, and you're interested in a property in Bangkok, you don't have to hop on a plane for an initial viewing.
Right.
VR lets you get a real sense of the place. And for off-plan developments where the building doesn't even exist yet,
Yeah.
it's amazing. You can actually experience the layout, the finishes, the feel of the space
Mm-hmm.
way better than just looking at brochures or floor plans.
Yeah.
And being able to customize things virtually.
Right.
That's powerful. Buyers can really envision their future home, and that can speed up the decision-making process.
Yeah.
It also opens things up to a wider pool of potential buyers for developers.
Well, it's a win-win in a way.
Yeah.
Okay, now who are the buyers?
Right.
What are the trends in terms of who's looking to buy and who's renting? It seems like there's a shift happening, right? More people choosing to rent instead of buy,
Absolutely.
especially millennials and expats who want flexibility. I mean, the rising cost of property probably plays a role too, right?
It does. It does. In a global city like Bangkok with lots of expats and millennials who are often moving around for work, for lifestyle,
Yep.
renting just makes sense. It's less commitment, less upfront cost.
Yeah.
And as property prices keep climbing, it becomes more and more financially attractive.
Right.
So yeah, there's this huge demand for high-quality rentals with good amenities, convenient locations.
Okay. And what are millennials looking for specifically?
Yeah.
I mean, the sources talk about a preference for locations with good public transport, modern amenities, co-working spaces,
Right.
gyms, a focus on sustainability, and a desire for community.
Yeah,
Even social media seem to be shaping things.
it is.
How are developers responding to all of this?
Well, this generation, they know what they want, right? Convenience, connectivity. That's why being near public transport is so important.
Co-working spaces, gyms that fits their lifestyle, that work-life blend.
Yeah.
Sustainability is a core value for many of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they crave that sense of community, that
Yeah.
human connection in a digital world. Developers get it. They're incorporating all of these things into their projects because they know it's what solves.
Right. They have to.
And social media. Well, that's how these developments are showcased. That's how trends spread. That's how millennials get ideas.
Yeah, that's a whole other layer to this. And remote work, I mean, that's changing where people want to live too, right?
Yeah.
More demand for suburban properties, more space, better work-life balance.
Right.
And those smart home technologies we were talking about.
They're particularly appealing for people with home offices.
Right.
Definitely. Remote work means you don't have to be in the city center.
Yeah.
So the suburbs become more attractive. More space, closer to nature, maybe a slower pace of life,
Mm-hmm.
often at a better price than comparable properties in the city.
And those smart home features, well, they make managing a home office so much easier,
Right.
creating that comfortable, productive environment.
Okay, let's move on up the ladder a bit and talk about luxury real estate in Bangkok.
All right.
It seems like the very definition of luxury is changing.
It is.
It's not just about fancy materials anymore. It's about experiences, resort-style living, concierge services,
Mm.
even those green features like advanced air filtration, natural materials.
Right.
What's driving that shift?
It's a move towards a more holistic idea of luxury.
Yeah.
It's not just about showing off wealth. It's about well-being, convenience, and even responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Experiences, high-end services, that's about creating a seamless, privileged life.
Yeah.
And the emphasis on green features, well, it shows that even at the high end, people are thinking about their health, their impact on the environment.
It's interesting, right? It's
Yeah.
like luxury with a conscience.
Yeah.
And what are those high net worth individuals looking for in Bangkok? The sources mentioned prime locations, Sukhumvit, the riverside, all of that.
Mhm.
Privacy, unique architectural designs.
Right.
And Bangkok seems to be a magnet for global investors, particularly in the condo market.
Yeah, prime locations, they never go out of style, right?
Right.
Prestige, access to amenities, great investment potential.
Mm-hmm.
High net worth buyers, they want privacy, they want exclusivity,
Yeah.
and they want something architecturally distinctive, something that stands out.
Mm-hmm.
Bangkok offers all of that. Plus, compared to other global cities, luxury property here can be relatively affordable.
Right.
So it's attractive for investors, both for personal use and as an investment opportunity. The condo market is particularly hot.
Yeah, it makes sense. And even in the luxury sector, we're seeing this trend towards sustainable development. Eco-friendly features, responsible practices.
Right.
So it's not just a niche thing anymore.
No, not here.
Even the top end of the market is looking for ways to live more sustainably.
Exactly. Sustainability is going mainstream across all segments. Even at the luxury level, people want to reduce their footprint, live in a way that aligns with their values.
Yeah.
So you're seeing these high-end residences that combine luxury and sustainability, and that's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So for someone who's looking to get into the market
Right.
or maybe expand their portfolio,
Mm-hmm.
where are the opportunities? The sources talk about emerging areas, neighborhoods with new transport links coming,
Right.
future MRT and BTS extensions, the Purple Line extension, the Don Mueang district.
Yeah.
The idea seems to be to look beyond the traditional hotspots, right?
Exactly. Think of it this way. If you invest in an area that's about to get a major infrastructure upgrade,
Mm-hmm.
you're getting in ahead of the curve.
Right.
These emerging areas often have lower property prices now, but as transport improves, development follows.
Yeah.
Those prices have the potential to climb significantly. Plus, you might be able to get a bigger property for your money compared to the more established areas.
Yeah. That's a good point. And it sounds like there's a lot of potential for capital appreciation in those developing areas
Right.
with those
Yeah.
lower prices and the infrastructure improvements.
Yeah.
I mean, Bangkok is even being recognized as a prime investment destination in Asia, right?
It is. There are several factors at play. Ongoing infrastructure development is a big signal, shows continued growth.
Hmm.
Thailand's economy is doing well overall, and Bangkok is strategically located.
Yeah.
It's a regional hub. And compared to some other major Asian cities, property prices in Bangkok are still relatively attractive.
Okay, so lots of potential there.
Yeah.
And then there's the rental market.
Right.
The sources say that rental yields can actually be higher in the suburbs than in the city center, partly because of the growing demand for larger properties, people working from home, needing more space. But they also emphasize the importance of doing your homework,
Right.
researching amenities, development plans.
Absolutely.
So, what are the key things to look at when you're assessing a suburban area for rental investment?
Okay, a few things. First, look at the local amenities.
Yeah.
Schools, shops, healthcare, all of that. Those things attract tenants.
Mm-hmm.
Second, transport. Good connectivity is essential. Even with remote work, people still need to get around, right?
Yeah.
Third, research any future development plans for the area.
Mm-hmm.
New infrastructure, commercial projects, those things can boost property values and drive up rental demand.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's switch gears again and talk about commercial real estate.
Right.
One thing that really stands out is the continued growth of co-working spaces.
Yeah.
It's not just freelancers anymore.
Right.
Even big companies are moving in,
Right.
looking for flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
And these spaces are offering better and better facilities, more desirable locations.
Absolutely.
What's fueling that demand?
It's a fundamental shift in how businesses are thinking about their office needs.
Okay.
Freelancers, startups, they love co-working spaces because they're flexible and affordable.
Hmm.
But when bigger companies start moving in, it means they're looking for agility, they want to avoid long leases, they want to offer employees more options.
Right.
And as the market matures, quality becomes even more important.
Mhm.
Better facilities, prime locations. It's all about attracting the best tenants.
Yeah, the market's evolving, right? And what about traditional retail? It seems like it's recovering,
Yeah.
but with a focus on in-person experiences, entertainment, food, events,
Right.
all that stuff. And this is despite the growth of online shopping.
It is.
The sources even gave us some projected retail growth rates for the next few years. I mean, what does this tell us about the future of physical retail in Bangkok?
It tells us that physical stores still have a place, but they need to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
E-commerce is here to stay, but it can't replicate everything.
Yeah,
Brick and mortar stores, they need to become destinations.
right.
They need to offer experiences that you can't get online. The growth projections suggest that this strategy can work, especially when stores combine online and offline offerings, creating those compelling experiences that draw people in.
Okay, and e-commerce itself is having a huge impact on commercial property,
Oh, absolutely.
driving up demand for warehouses, distribution centers.
Right.
It seems like traditional retail needs to adapt, maybe by becoming more like showrooms or offering pickup points for online orders.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
The sources really emphasize location and logistics infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. How important are those things now? They're crucial. E-commerce needs efficient storage and distribution networks.
Yeah.
So demand for well-located warehouses, logistics facilities, that's skyrocketing.
Mhm.
Traditional retailers, they need to get creative with their physical spaces, maybe shrink their stores, use them as showrooms, create dedicated pickup areas.
Mhm.
And for both logistics operators and retailers, being in the right location, having good access to transportation networks, well, that's make or break now.
Okay, it's all about adapting, right?
Right.
All right, now let's talk about regulatory changes,
Yeah.
because those can really shake things up in the property market.
Mm-hmm.
The sources stress how important it is to stay informed about new laws.
Right.
They even mention potential changes to land ownership regulations that could affect foreign investors.
Yeah, that's something to watch carefully.
Yeah.
Changes to land ownership rules can have a big impact, especially for foreigners looking to invest in Bangkok.
Mm-hmm.
So it's vital to keep up with any proposed or enacted changes.
Right.
Understand how they might affect your investment strategy.
Okay. And then you have regulations around foreign investments specifically.
Right.
The government might be making some adjustments there, particularly in areas like the EEC.
Mm-hmm.
And there are concerns about speculative buying.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're walking a tightrope.
They are. Governments want to attract foreign capital, but they also want to keep the market stable, prevent bubbles.
Hmm.
So they use foreign investment regulations to try to strike that balance. Changes to those regulations, especially in key zones like the EEC, can create opportunities, but they can also shift the investment landscape.
Hmm.
Staying informed is key for both local and international investors.
Okay, and then there are tax incentives for developers.
Right.
The sources say those can influence what kinds of projects get built and where.
Yeah.
They give examples like reduced taxes for eco-friendly developments, credits for projects in certain economic zones.
Mm-hmm.
But they also say that regulations can change unpredictably
They can.
and that it's important to get expert advice to navigate all of this.
Exactly. Tax incentives are a powerful tool. Governments use them to encourage certain types of development,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's sustainability, investment in specific areas.
Right.
By offering financial benefits, they can incentivize developers to align with broader policy goals.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said, things can change quickly, so it's always best to consult with experts who understand the current landscape
Yeah.
and can anticipate potential shifts.
Okay, so much to think about. Yeah. All right, finally, let's look at the crystal ball and talk about what the experts are predicting for Bangkok property in 2025.
All right.
The consensus seems to be continued growth,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a bit more moderate, driven by those key factors we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Transport, sustainability, technology.
Right.
And there's a growing focus on lifestyle, too.
Yeah, definitely. The investments in public transport, they're going to keep opening up new areas.
Mm-hmm.
The demand for sustainable smart homes, that's going to shape what gets built.
Right.
And buyers are going to be more and more focused on lifestyle amenities and features when making their decisions.
Yeah, it's not just about the property itself anymore.
No, it's about the whole package.
But the sources also point out some potential risks and challenges.
Right.
Things like economic fluctuations, potential changes to government regulations, especially around foreign ownership and taxes.
Mm-hmm.
They even mentioned the example of rental prices dropping in Hong Kong
Yeah.
as a bit of a cautionary tale.
Right. It's important to stay realistic. Economic uncertainty, policy shifts, those things can definitely introduce volatility.
Yeah.
The Hong Kong example, it shows that external factors and policy changes can impact property values,
Mhm.
rental yields.
Yeah.
So it's crucial to stay informed about broader economic trends and any potential regulatory changes.
But overall, the long-term projections for Bangkok are pretty positive, right?
They are.
They talk about continued urbanization, economic growth, Bangkok's strategic location,
Mhm.
the demand for sustainable and smart properties.
Right.
And that trend of people choosing to rent instead of buy, that's expected to continue.
Yeah.
They even included a list of areas they think will see particularly strong growth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
No, not at all. The fundamentals for long-term growth in Bangkok, they're solid.
Mhm.
Urbanization, economic expansion, the city's location, the demand for modern, sustainable living.
Yeah.
It all points towards continued appreciation over time. And for investors in the rental market,
Yeah.
well, that shift towards renting is good news.
Okay.
Ah.
So there's a lot to be optimistic about, but also a lot to be aware of.
Right.
Lots of moving parts. Right.
Definitely.
And the sources you sent, they actually encourage people to visit their website for more in-depth insights.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly there's a lot more to explore here.
Absolutely. We've just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But hopefully this deep dive has given you a good overview of what's shaping the Bangkok property market as we head towards 2025.
Yeah. It's a fascinating market. And clearly knowledge is power. Right.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Staying informed is crucial for anyone looking to navigate this market successfully.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So thinking about everything we've talked about today,
Mm-hmm.
all these shifts happening in Bangkok,
Yeah.
I mean, what kinds of communities, what kinds of living spaces do you think will be the most sought after in the next few years? Or with so many people working remotely,
Right.
how might the idea of a prime location change in a city like Bangkok? Lots to ponder, right?
Lots to ponder, absolutely. Exciting times ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everybody.